Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Real Point of View. I am your movie guy and guide, Greg Morgan, and I'm here with the must-see movie critic, Mr. Larry Domkowski,
Hey.
Steve, the guy who doesn't pick a bad movie, and the movie maven herself, Miss Karen Dean. How you guys doing?
Hey,
All right,
hey.
our second half of our episode talking about scenes from movies that make the movies for you. So we've gone over a few scenes, and we're going to do some more this time. So you're up, Steve. What's your news?
All right. The next movie I'm gonna choose. It's actually a good sports movie. Not gonna call it the greatest of all time because it's nowhere near the top, but it is just a good, wholesome movie dealing with one of the sports everybody can play. Maybe not can play well, but everybody can play because everybody can play golf. Golf is such an easy sport to learn. It is an easy sport it's an easy sport to learn. It's not an easy sport to be good at. There's a big difference. Trust me, I know. But the one thing about golf is you just go out and you play, and the scene
I'm sorry, I'm having technical issues.
obviously.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry. I really apologize, Steve. I'm sorry.
So I want to know why you did it on Steve's part, though.
I don't need to know because I already know.
No.
I'm
That
just
was
I'm just
completely
surprised.
unintentional.
I'm just surprised it didn't come from Greg.
What you
This
don't
was not
know
a comment
is that
on the
Greg-
past.
Greg
I
sent
don't
a
have an
secret
opinion on the
message
past.
to Karen.
Yeah.
Karen, did you know that in the second portion of the pest there's a grinding sound
There you
very similar to, and his explanation for that is equally as bad, but we won't go there.
We will go there. No,
You know,
I really apologize. I sincerely apologize, Steve.
And you know what? That gives me another idea for another episode, is that all we can pick are movies that one of us can't stand.
Now
Ooh.
that's a good idea.
Wow, that would last about a year.
Or 30 seconds, depending what comes first.
37 seconds.
Whoa.
'Cause I'm bringing in Bruce Lee. I was just saying. I'm sorry, Steve. Go ahead. Let us know the scene of the movie that you were describing before you're so rudely interrupted.
It's stupid. No, but
Stupid.
the movie stars Matt Damon and Will Smith, and it's called The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Oh God.
Wow.
A little backstory is
A mystery.
the Legend of Bagger Vance is about what's up, party dude?
What's up, party?
There's a guy on the camera. He's checking everything out. What's up?
What's up, Matthew?
How's it going?
Say hi,
What's up,
Matt.
Matthew?
Hi, how's it going?
This is my lovely
Hi.
family.
How you doing? Hey.
Say hi, Matt. Say hi, Matthew. There you go.
Hi, Matthew. Say hi, Matthew. Hi, Matthew.
Very
So
cool.
anyway.
Okay, now that one's an okay interruption. There's nothing wrong with that one.
Oh God.
Weird grinding in the background.
I love it.
Not preferred.
I love it.
Not so much.
I love it. I will read it when I'm done here.
But the movie is The Legend of Bagger Vance. It's the story about an African American guy way back in the early 40s who was actually the stories are told that he was probably one of the greatest golfers of all time. But he just wasn't allowed on courses to actually play golf with professionals and everything like that during that period of time. This kind of takes a little bit of that with him educating someone or multiple people, depending on how you want to read the story, in, dealing with problems that they have in life and, getting control of their life back. And the one scene that really sets this up for me is Matt Damon is playing Randolph Juno. When he was younger, he was an amazing golfer. It's almost like he was a prodigy for the sport. But he went and he went to World War II, and he was the only survivor of his troop that went, and they were all members of the town, and he felt so disheartened and kind of destroyed that he receives the Medal of Honor for surviving, but he comes back to town and he can't look anyone in the face. He becomes an alcoholic. He's haunted by all of these things that happen, and he's let that control him. Well, it ends up the town sets things up because of the depression that's going on. Sets things up to re-energize the town, to have some motivation for people to come back to this area by holding a golf tournament in which they bring in Walter Hagen, Bobby Jones, two of the greatest golfers of all time, period. And then they're going to have their hometown boy, Randolph Juneau, support them and be their hero again, and come out and challenge these great titans of golf. And there's moments in the movie when he's still being haunted by the war, by what he feels is his failure. And Bagger Vance, who becomes his caddy to help motivate him and guide him through this, the scene is just really poetic in its presentation of him trying to get him to believe in himself again, and understanding that what happened in the past is the past and you can't change it, but you can let it not control you. You can fight it. And he talking about golf, this is just a game. It's just a game. You can't win it. It's just like life. You can't win at this. You can only play it. Mm-hmm. And he's reaffirming him. There's like no one in this world doesn't have problems. Like you can let it stop you, or you can start over. You can just start walking. And he asks, where? Go back to where you were. But that was a long time ago. No, it was just a moment ago. Don't let all this time that's gone by and everything that's happened keep you from being who you can be, who you were. And it's just so nice, and it's so there's so many good moments in this movie, but this one, to really bring this character back from his depression, to bring him into the forefront of being who he remembers to be, who the town remembers him to be. The town can look up to him. The town can believe in their hero again. During a period of time when there's not much to believe in.
Right.
The depression was so bad for everyone, almost everyone. And it's just get back to what you know, get back to who you were, go up there, hit that ball, and drive those problems out. Mm-hmm. And just start walking. So it just the whole scene is just so good with him trying to bring him out of that darkness, and it really is a scene that I have to watch the whole movie for. So
copy that. Cool beans. All right, Karen, you're up.
Okay, my movie is Absence of Malice. It's a 1981 movie starring Paul Newman, Sally Field, Bob Balaban, who it was just wonderful in this movie, and I love the way I mean it's a 1981 movie. I remember when this movie was in the theaters, and the way in which it was promoted. There was a long introduction, as part of the trailer, which basically included the line of, "What if everything they wrote about you was accurate, but none of it was true?" And it's really sort of just this kind of take on the newspaper industry and the abuses that journalism, that what happens when fake news really is fake news. And this sort of, talks about, we talk about fake news today as if it's something that was just discovered, But 1981, they were talking about fake news too. And that was like, almost 40 years ago. Anyway, the story is just premised on Paul Newman's character, Michael Gallagher, who's the son of a mobster. And there's a killing, there's a murder of a union leader, and Michael Gallagher's father is the police like him for that murder. The federal prosecutor, who's played by Bob Balaban, decides to sort of goose the investigation by getting some press on Michael Gallagher, the son. There's absolutely no evidence that he was involved in any way, shape, or form with the murder. But this prosecutor is thinking, if we get some like unfavorable press or some attention on him, he'll tell us what he knows, and then we can go forward and find out what really happened to this union leader. So this federal prosecutor manipulates a young reporter who's played by Sally Field. She's working on the union leader's murder case. She comes to see him, and he sort of just accidentally on purpose leaves information critical to the investigation, implying that Michael Gallagher was somehow a suspect. And Sally Field just runs with it. So that's how things get started. And all of this unwanted press attention means that Michael Gallagher's business, now all of a sudden, his livelihood is at risk, because the men who work for him, he's like a liquor warehouse salesman, distributor. And the men who work for him, because there weren't any women, but the men who work for him, are the union are like, we can't work for you because you were involved in the murder of the union leader. And he's like, no, I wasn't. They're like, well, let us know if you get acquitted, but and of course there was no actual investigation of Michael Gallagher ever announced, because the federal policy was not to ever discuss who they're investigating. So it was just a circle that was just tightening and tightening. The key is that Michael Gallagher has an alibi for why he wasn't involved. He was someplace, he wasn't even in the state at the time that this man was murdered. He has an ironclad alibi, but he can't say what it is. His best friend, a woman, needed him to go with her. So he went with her, and so he was nowhere near that, but he didn't want to talk about it. He knows his friend is fragile, and that if this information got out, it could just have major repercussions. So he doesn't want to talk about it, so he can't really acquit himself. Anyway, there's this scene in the movie, like maybe about 2/3 of the way through the movie. Sally Field's character, she played this reporter named Megan. Megan comes across Paul Newman's friend. They'd been introduced already. And Paul Newman's friend was named Teresa. So Teresa says, listen, I know that this, that all of this attention, that the police think that Michael might have done that, but I know he didn't. And Sally feels like, well, what are you talking about? What do you mean he didn't? And she's like, no, I know. I can tell you with absolute certainty that he could not have done this. And so then Sally Field says, well, why don't you tell me? She's like, well, Teresa's like, well, if I tell you, will you promise that it could just be between us? I'll tell you what the reason was, but it just has to be between us. And Sally Field says, do you realize you're talking to a newspaper right now? And Teresa just looks at her like, she's like, you're talking to a newspaper right now. Anything you say has got to go, I've got to put it in the story. That's the only way that you can help him. And then after that, she starts like writing. Teresa tells her, but then she and Sally Field's writing, and Teresa just walks off because it's like she just she is just contemplating that the secret is going to destroy her and her family, but it's also going to save her friend. And Sally Field, Megan is so busy writing things down. She doesn't really care. She doesn't care about Teresa. So she's just writing things down, and she's like, okay, well, now she's got another scoop. And then the movie goes on from there. I won't say what the secret is because for people who haven't seen the movie, it would just really ruin it. But anyway, that scene, I love that scene. It's like, to me, that crystallized the whole movie. What is the difference? What is news and what is truth? And what is the difference between where do your ethics begin and end when you're a reporter? What are your obligations? Now, Sally Field's character knows, and she acts on the notion that, you don't reveal your sources. But there are other ethical boundaries that apply to journalism, to reporters. It's not just that, it's just there are other things. Where does she draw her lines? And can you talk to a person who's a reporter who you think is your friend? Can you trust that person to actually be your friend and to stop being a reporter?
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's a good part of the film. That's a great part of the film.
So to me, I just love that scene. Do you know you're talking to a newspaper right now? It's like, oh snap!
Mm-hmm.
No, she thinks she's talking to a person.
Right. And that's the irony, because who says a newspaper should be insensitive? Who says a newspaper should just deal with information and not facts? Yeah, that's really good.
Black and white paper shows no emotion.
Copy that. Interesting. Oh, that was cool, Karen. All right,
Love
Larry.
that movie. One of my favorites.
It's a very good movie. I've seen that too. It's a good one. How about you,
And
Larry?
Melinda Dillon, one more thing. Melinda Dillon, who played Teresa in the movie, won the Best Supporting Actress Oscar for that movie. Paul Newman was nominated for Best Actor, but did not win. Sally Field, I believe, was nominated, but also did not win.
When did that film come out again?
1981. 1981.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, so my next film, or the film I'm reviewing now, a moment in space and time in that film, is a film that came out in 1957.
Wow.
And it stars one of my heroes of filmdom, which is James Cagney. And this film is called Man of a Thousand Faces. It's a biopic about Lon Chaney. Not Lon Chaney Jr., not the werewolf. We're talking his father.
His father, right.
His father, who played all of these grotesque monsters in the silent films. Many film viewers are very familiar with the scene from that silent version of Phantom of the Opera, where the Phantom goes, ah, like that. That's Lon Chaney Sr.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this film, James Cagney, playing Lon Chaney, is a vaudeville act and a juggler, and he's struggling. And he meets this woman of his life, played by Dorothy Malone. Beautiful actress, gorgeous actress, and ended up becoming very famous down the line. Earlier days, he just did bit parts, like a lot of actors. And she's this glamorous woman in this film who's in love with this Lon Chaney, and he's always good with his physicalness, with his ability to juggle, his ability to express himself through body language in the film and in the story. And she's amazed by this, that he's so brilliant about this, and someday he's going to be great. And then he finally invites her to his home. And he has this all set up. He has music going on. He has his parents dancing, ballroom dancing in the house. And then it's revealed that his parents are deaf, totally deaf. They can't talk, they can't hear, but they have a normal family.
Mm-hmm.
And this just horrifies Dorothy Malone. You see, at this point, there, there, or soon after that, or just before that, I think it's just before that now. The James Cagney character and the Dorothy Malone character get married, and she's pregnant. Now she thinks that her child is going to be a freak,
Mm-hmm.
and she just can't handle this. And shortly after this, she sees her husband James sign language, and she cannot stand that because she doesn't know, and so it must be bad.
Mm-hmm.
And he's praying that she understands, and instead she walks out. She has her child and then walks out on him, leaving him and the child.
Mm-hmm.
That moment when praying in sign language is so profound, because it's at this point you realize that all of the creatures that he portrays in this film are the creatures that he saw, how people saw his family when he was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when you look at these, and interestingly enough, if you go back and watch the original Lon Chaney horror movies, you don't see the grotesque person, you see a soul, and you see somebody who has desires and hopes and dreams and is refused because of a physical attribute.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment when he's praying, and it's good that they do it through praying, because the whole concept of soul, the whole concept of redemption, the whole concept of grace comes to that in that moment. And then after that, he and his son move to Hollywood, and he becomes the Lon Chaney that we know. And there's a lot more to the picture than what I said. Eventually, Dorothy Malone's character comes back to try to get her son back. But there's another magic moment in there, but I can't tell you what it is because that'll give away the ending.
Copy
Got to
that.
see this movie, 1957, Man of a Thousand
Man of a
Faces.
Thousand Faces, yeah.
Very cool. All right, Steve, you're up. Got anything else for us?
I do have one. I kind of hold on to this one because I don't talk about it much, because I get a lot of people, not necessarily the normal crowd that I associate with, but I get a lot of people that don't really care for the director of the movie I'm going to talk about. And I love him. I personally look like him, which is really weird too. It's Kevin Smith is the director of the movie. And the movie I chose is Chasing Amy.
He is a good director.
He's a great director. I love him. I get a lot of people that kind of give me some flack for it, but you know, it doesn't matter what they think. But in Chasing Amy, there's a scene where Ben Affleck's character, Holden McNeil, is at a diner with two of his friends, which is Jay and Silent Bob, one of Kevin Smith's most famous characters. And the one thing about Silent Bob is silent. He doesn't say anything. So this was such an amazing moment because it's the most we had heard out of Silent Bob in the whole time leading up to this. From Clerks, Mallrats, them two being Jay and Silent Bob, in the other offshoot stuff, you don't really hear much. And it's really great that this is a whole scene just with the quiet guy talking. So they're sitting at this diner, and Holden, Ben Affleck, is going on and on about this relationship that he's in and the craziness of it, and the fact that it's just blah 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 blah. This is how weird it is. This is how crazy. I can't believe it. And da da da. And he and the girlfriend that he had just had a conversation with a little bit before this had said some things that were terrible to each other. And Ben Affleck kind of went off the rails and, called her names, and he's disgusted with her and he can't believe all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. So we get to Silent Bob, who goes, namesake of the movie, "Oh, so you're chasing Amy." To which Ben Affleck is like, "Excuse me, what?" So Silent Bob goes into this whole spiel about a girl he knew about a couple years ago. They were inseparable. They were together all of the time, big time in love. 4 months down the road, he has a stupid moment. For guys, it's a little bit different with the stupid moments, but he asks about her ex-boyfriend. So it's kind of a need to know, we would say it's a really dumb move. We would say, the questions that you don't want to know the answer to, but you really want to know the answer to. So she comes back with this story. It was like, oh, well, she tells him about how they fell in love, and she tells him that they went out for a couple of years and how they lived together. But my mother loves you better. The blah, 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 the really okay stuff. Then she starts telling him other things. Just things that you don't normally talk about in public, that you wouldn't normally bring out, that you would only bring out when you're conversating with somebody you truly care about. The darker side of the pillow, so to speak. They start having that story, and it just blows his mind. He can't understand it. He doesn't know how to react to it. So he goes on a tirade. He blows up at her, and she's just trying to calmly explain herself. She was like, "That's who I was. I'm not like that anymore. It was just a thing that period of time, blah, blah, blah." He won't have it. Finally, he looks her dead in the eye, leaves. He's like, "I'm done. I can't do it." So they're like, yeah, that's what you should have done. He goes, "No, you idiot. It was a mistake. I wasn't disgusted with her. I was afraid. In that moment, I felt small. I was inexperienced. I felt like I would never be enough for her." And then he goes on to this whole spiel about regret and understanding situations and coming to terms with people's past, and being like, it wasn't that she wanted me to be better. She wanted me to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And then in just a poetic moment, he lights a cigarette. He goes, "She was the girl, and I know that now." And he lights a cigarette. He goes, "I pushed her away." He goes, "And I've spent every day since chasing Amy." And it's just, for the movie that it is, because it's a Kevin Smith movie. It's got some crude humor. It's got some stupidity in it. It's got some stuff that makes you think outside the box, but the way they present it, you don't really think about that till later on.
Mm-hmm.
And to have this big scene with Silent Bob, the character that doesn't talk very much, but always has those little nuggets of infinite wisdom, it's amazing. And it's arguably one of the best scenes he has ever written.
One of the things that I absolutely love about that scene is that it pulls all three of that New Jersey trilogy together.
Yep.
Clerks and Mallrats. That scene where Silent Bob speaks pulls them all together. That is for all three films, that's a crucial scene. That's a great choice.
Yeah, it was a good choice.
And that scene got a lot of attention when the movie came out. It was like, "Oh, Silent Bob talks."
Yeah,
I remember it actually like trended on news.
It actually got a lot of attention because they were like, "Oh my God, Kevin Smith can write."
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
And it's also interesting how, because if you know anything about Kevin Smith's love of comic books, that particular movie is semi-autobiographical, and it's gorgeous. I love it. And it gave me a whole new meaning of Chinese handcuff.
Look it up,
I
kids.
gotcha. I got you.
Yeah,
I
whoa,
gotcha.
okay.
Look it up, kids.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting long in the tooth again. How fast the time flies. I do have one more, if you guys don't mind.
Yes, please.
This movie
Don't
takes
mind.
place in 1967, and two of my favorite actors are in it, and they are early in the film adversarial, and later in the film, very, for lack of a better way of saying it, cordial.
I would call them allies, maybe.
Yeah,
Not friends.
definitely not
Definitely
friends,
not
but definitely
friends.
allies, and a little cordial by the end of the movie. So the movie is In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger. So my moment in this film is relatively early in the film. A prominent person in the community who had come to the community to help elevate and rebuild the small town is killed. He's found murdered. So the police department is looking for who might have done it. And so the chief of police, who's Rod Steiger's character, Gillespie, sends out his people to try to find, who might have done this thing. Now, this is in the Deep South, and at this point in time, especially during this time, Black people are not considered very much, especially in this town. So one of the police officers happens by the train station, and he sees this ridiculously well-dressed man sitting there waiting for a train. Now he's the only person in there. He's waiting for a train, so the officers think he's trying to get out of town. So he, instead of talking to him civilly, he arrests him and takes him back to the precinct. So at the precinct,
Treating while black.
So at the precinct, he has his suspect sitting in the other room. He goes to his chief of police and he says, "Hey, I got this guy. I think you need to talk to him." And so he says, "All right, bring him in." So he brings him in, and I'm going to get past all the early parts of the scene. They're starting a conversation. Excuse me. So Rod Steiger has his officer leave the room, and it's just this gentleman and Gillespie. Gillespie asks who he is. He says his name is Virgil Tibbs. He said, "Virgil?" He gets into this name. He's kind of trying to mock him a little bit, and he pretends to have this nice conversation, but he gets to the point. And here's the point in the movie that I thought was a very poignant point, very important part of the film, is this conversation between Chief Gillespie and Virgil Tibbs. So in the essence of this, he gets Virgil Tibbs' billfold and notices there's a lot of money in here. So the first thing that comes to his mind is he killed this prominent person for his money, knowing that he might be rich and had all this money and stole the money. So he's like, "Where did you get all this money then?" After telling him that he's in there because someone was murdered. He's like, "Well, where'd you get all this money for?" And Virgil answers back, "I earned it." He said, "You earned it? Color can't earn this kind of money." "Where did you earn it?" He said, "Philadelphia." He said, "Philadelphia what?" "Pennsylvania." He said, "Well, what kind of work do you do in Pennsylvania where you can earn this kind of money? Heck, that's almost 3 times my salary." He goes, "I'm a police detective." So this police officer is talking to another police officer.
Ouch.
Finds out, first of all, that he makes a heck of a lot more money than he does. But more importantly, he goes from being the aggressor to now he feels stupid. And now he feels let down. And so he calls the other officer back in the room and he goes, did you question this man before you brought him here?
That is exactly what he sounded like too.
He says, no. He goes, yeah, look at this. And so the officer picks up the billfold and sees that there's a badge, detective badge, inside the billfold. He goes, yeah, yeah. Oh boy, what were you thinking? So to me, this begins what the movie starts to address, having to deal with people that you're not familiar with, having to deal with people that you look down upon and are condescending toward, realizing that it doesn't matter who or what you are, you may need that person in an important time. And so this goes from about to arrest somebody for murder to talking to the police chief of this guy to get him help, and then to find out that this guy, I talked to your captain, and you're a homicide detective, and we just had a homicide. And he's like, your point.
Right.
Your captain wants to talk to you. So he is voluntold to stay there and help them with their investigation. And this ignites the whole rest of the film. This begins the point counterpoint, pros and cons battle between these two very different people, but they're very different people looking to solve the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And they both share a sense of justice.
And
They definitely do, because that's the one thing that Gillespie is. It's not about just being assertive and over and aggressive. He is out to find out the truth.
That's right.
What he wants.
And one of the things that Steiger does so well here is that, especially in the era in which this film was made,
1967.
right, and with all the turmoil happening in the world and in the United States about that, Steiger is able to separate the peculiar racist attitudes of the place where he lives, and being able through the course of the film to realize he's a part of that too, and that he may not be able to fix everything, but he can work on fixing himself. And that was such a strong message at that point. And on top of it, Sidney Poitier does such a great job at holding his head up high and not taking second best to anyone in this film.
Anyone, anything, any comment?
Yeah.
Well, I love the scene where Gillespie goes, well, Virgil Tibbs, what kind of a name is that? What do they call you? Do they call you Virg? Do they call you Virgil? And Sidney Poitier is like, they call me Mr. Tibbs, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's like my favorite part.
And that's such a brilliant moment when these two meet, and it culminates into that moment too. It's amazing. It's immediately, and this is all exposition now.
Right.
This is all exposition, and it sets up the relationship. Boom, here it is. Now let's get on with the story. It's beautiful.
Here's the funny part of that, which I thought was funny. So Virgil picks up his billfold and he starts counting his money. And he tells him, I'll pay for the long distance call to my cap. He goes, you don't have to pay for that. What do you think we are? I'll pay for the call. He says, oh, what are you doing? I'm counting my money. It's all there. So the lack of trust is apparent, and it's just too funny.
You know, real quick.
Well, we've got 6 seconds.
Yeah, actually, we have more because of the whole